Is she gone? Baby gone?
She's so gone. I don't remember the song.
I wasn't even do the song.
God, we're such bad at jobs at our host. Our bad hosts at our job. Whatever. Welcome back to FilmograFeed. I'm Caleb.
I'm also Caleb, and we are switching again. This time it's not because one of us just doesn't want to watch the movies anymore, though. We are switching over to Ben Affleck in honor of Air. So we're going to be doing his directorial work, and then we'll get right back into Sorkin afterwards. But anyway,
AKA, we bought a shoe.
AKA, we bought a shoe. Anyway, we are going to be breaking down Gone Baby Gone, his first film. I don't think we really need to get into too much background for Ben Affleck's career. I think pretty much here's set the stage. This man had just done like Hollywoodland and was kind of like his career as an actor was kind of middling out a little bit.
Well, Hollywoodland was that weird moment for Ben Affleck where it was like, could he get nominated for an acting Oscar? And he like won the Golden Globe for Hollywoodland. And it was like Ben Affleck is back because like he had been on that rom-com stretch.
He had been on the rom-com stretch and Geely and just basically crap. He had been making crap for like the entirety of the early aughts.
And he had all that tabloid shit where like he and like Kevin Smith had their falling out and like everyone had their issues like with him as an actor. Like he not necessarily issues with him, but like his movies were failing and he like was having issues with the press and like Ben Affleck was like starting to become a toxic brand, and then he does Hollywoodland and everyone's like, oh, Ben Affleck can act. And then he makes this and everyone's like, oh, Ben Affleck can direct. And let me tell you, neither of us have seen this. This was a first time watch for both of us in the Boatman residence, and what a weird experience that was watching this. Where it was like halfway through the movie, we're like, "Oh, it's over." That was a short movie, and we look and there's like 50 minutes left in this movie, like an hour left. We're like, "Where are we going? What is happening?" And it was it was a fun watch. I'll tell you.
Let's start from the beginning, though. So the film opens. A little girl has been taken, kidnapped. And Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan are private investigators who are also in a relationship who've been brought in basically to help find the girl. And that's kind of the setup for most of the movie. It's, the good first half of that movie is looking for the girl and kind of understanding what's going on. But so you get the setup of looking for this girl, and there seems to be some kind of resistance. The mother is played by Amy Ryan, and I guess I'm kind of this film takes so many turns. I'm struggling to kind of figure out where we jump in here. But let's start off with Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan.
I think we can start, where this movie essentially poses itself as a detective story, like a Boston crime detective story is how this starts off. We got a disgruntled police chief in Morgan Freeman. You have these two private detectives that are Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan. You have Ed Harris, who's this sort of like tough cop that they have to somewhat work with, who's working the case. And you sort of meet all the characters, and you meet Amy Ryan, who is nominated for her performance in this, and is phenomenal.
Really good.
Really, really good.
Especially if you know her as like Holly from The Office or like from other things, and you're like, wow, that it's a very different role for you. It's a good role, but very different.
She really breaks out in this in like a weird way where it's like, oh, she got her Oscar nomination, like Amy Ryan. Whenever you're like studying like Oscars, just like looking at the result sheets, that's always a weird one where you're like, Amy Ryan, Gone Baby Gone, what a weird nomination. And then you go back and look and it's like she won the Critics' Choice and she's like really good in this, and you watch the performance, you're like, damn, okay, Amy Ryan, she's cooking. Speaking of cooking, she is cooking meth and cocaine. That's what this character is doing.
No, this is the ultimate like drugged out character. And you kind of start to uncover that she's wasn't necessarily the most responsible mother. Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan figured this out. So they go to a bar and they kind of realize, oh, there's some deeper things going on here. But anyway, let's talk about Casey Affleck and Michelle Monaghan for a second.
Sure.
Because I do not think that Casey Affleck is very good in this. He's the performance, the element that holds the movie back.
Do I get to stand on my soapbox for 10 minutes and just talk about how much I fucking hate Casey Affleck as an actor? Because I think he's bad in most things, but especially this. He's really not good. We talked about it. You drop in any number of people, like a Jason Bateman type works in this even weirdly, like out of character. Like you could have a lot of people go. Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I think the one you brought up was Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal is like tailor made for this kind of performance. There's a lot of great actors that you could have slot in here.
I would throw in Elijah Wood. I think Elijah Wood has that.
Elijah Wood could really have grown and done really something cool here. Daniel Radcliffe, like maybe not this point, but Daniel Radcliffe would be good in a part like this. There's a lot of actors that you could have put in here before you get to number 7,981 in Hollywood, which is Casey Affleck.
Yeah, I mean, this is Benny wanting to cast his little brother. Like that.
Yeah, and what a miscast. He's so miscast because Casey Affleck just always comes off as a smarmy prick in everything. And I think this character, while he does need to be a little bit of like a, I know more than you douchebag a little bit, I feel like Ben Affleck would have been better for this part than Casey Affleck. I think Ben should have played the part himself, but I feel like he didn't want to direct himself on his first movie, which is a respectful choice. But it's like, Ben is better for that part. Ben Affleck is the perfect actor for this part, where it's like, I'm a guy who can be a smart aleck, but I'm cool under pressure, and I'm really always thinking about what I'm working on. And like, there's a lot going on up here. And when you look at Casey Affleck, that fucker doesn't have anything in between his ears. That fucker doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. I think Casey Affleck is a terrible actor and a terrible choice for this. But like, just in this performance, I don't buy him as any sort of intelligent PI. Like, I don't buy him as being good at his job whatsoever. And clearly the movie doesn't really support him being good at his job. And that's the thing I don't like, is that the movie, I think, clearly wants it to be, this is a bigger case than this guy can necessarily handle, but he rises to the occasion. And the movie instead sort of just comes off as this guy's out of his depth and he never gets into his depth. And he kind of stumbles his way through the case.
Yeah, they're kind of going weird in between, like, a little more hard, basically kind of in between the two Marlowes. Kind of in between your Bogart Marlowe and your Elliot Gould Marlowe, where it's like your Bogart Marlowe is a little bit more capable, and your Elliot Gould is a little more schlubby. And I think they're kind of doing a weird thing where he's kind of neither. And I think that's maybe the biggest problem. I don't know if that's necessarily the problem as written as much as it is as
it's entirely not the script's fault, because the script knows what character it wants him to be, and Casey just is not the right actor equipped to do that, which is unfortunate because I think Michelle Monaghan's a really fun counterpart to that. I think she's doing a lot to try and elevate that duo. And it's an interesting idea to kind of, they're essentially bringing that relationship dynamic of the Thin Man.
Yeah,
but it's the Thin Man dynamic of a relationship couple solving cases. And Monaghan is clearly trying to channel into that, like a darker version of that.
Yeah.
And Casey Affleck is not able to do
comedic elements, but I think the idea of a couple solving mysteries, but also I think it kind of takes it in a more interesting direction than the Thin Man does, because there's actual, like, not just, the stakes of the case, but also the stakes of the relationship, because that wire does get tested.
That wire is pushed to the limit. And I think the issue with that comes when, again, I just think Casey's not equipped to show what this character needs, whereas Ben would have killed. I think Ben would have crushed this part. I think Jake Gyllenhaal is probably my dream actor for this part. I think he would have stepped into this and hit a home run. But like, I think the movie's biggest issue is miscast its lead, because the world around him supporting performances are all phenomenal. Like Meg Ryan, Morgan Freeman, Ed Harris, Michelle Monaghan are all killing. Did I say Meg Ryan?
Yeah.
Amy Ryan.
What a different movie this would be.
Listen, Meg Ryan playing a coked out, drugged out mom. What a performance that reach would be.
Probably if she wants to get nominated for an Oscar, it's probably what she would have to do.
At this point, she's long gone retired. But no, I do think like the cast of characters that Ben assembles around Casey are so much better and so much more equipped that, like, this story where the detective not necessarily needs to be the main character, like, you have to like him, but you have to at least understand what he's going through, and Casey doesn't give you that.
Yeah. He's like the one issue with this movie. So anyway, they start to uncover a little bit more of the case, and then you get more of the cops coming in. The captain, played by Morgan Freeman.
Who is terrific.
Who is phenomenal in this. I think he's the best performance in the movie besides Amy Ryan. Morgan Freeman, who it's revealed that he had lost his own child years ago,
and established this task force.
and has established this task force of Ed Harris and a few other people to do this. You have Ed Harris and his partner, who are
It's just some guy. He's just
yeah,
some guy.
they're just your detectives. But Ed Harris is very good in this.
Ed Harris is really scary at times, where he's just really intimidating. I don't remember who plays Amy Ryan's brother, but
It's not anyone's. It's someone who looks like Bobby Cannavale but isn't Bobby Cannavale.
True. He's like, I don't remember. He's pretty good though. He's solid. I'll have to look up who that is. Also, Michael K. Williams is in this for like 3 or 4 scenes, and he's great. Like this movie's just got a really good deep bench of characters that are great. But like Morgan Freeman brings such a tenderness to this part where you're like, you instantly are like, oh, I'm in. I'm whatever Morgan's selling, I'm buying. And you're just like taking stock. And this movie does such a good job of making you buy into the reality of Morgan Freeman's character and like really trusting in his cause. And that really gives you the emotional weight of this movie rests on Morgan Freeman's character. And like
Titus
all the way
Oliver plays the brother role.
He's good. I do think he's quite good actually.
But yeah, no, I agree. Freeman is really good in this. It feels kind of like a weird combination of his role from $1 Million Baby and his role from Shawshank.
A lot more Shawshank than $1 Million Baby, but I get what you mean. Like there's a hint of what he does in $1 Million Baby in terms of like a little more hard edged side to him.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of Shawshank. Like he draws a lot from his Shawshank performance, where it's that tenderness, but that like that ability at the drop of a hat to get serious, like really serious.
Yeah. But no, he's very good. So anyway, Affleck and Monahan learn a little bit more about the case, do some investigating, and then they kind of are able to track back to this Haitian drug dealer named Cheese. Which
that actor is what's his name? You pointed out. He's phenomenal. He's in one scene and he is phenomenal.
He is in, and I'm getting to that scene because it's a great scene where basically Affleck is like, hey, what's going on? And it's kind of very chill, and then it's like, are you wearing a wire? And they're like, and they're like, okay, no, okay. And then he gets into this monologue where he drops the title, and it's like an all-timer title drop.
It's really funny.
It is a great title drop. That is a really good title drop. But yeah, Kathigi is great. He is really good in this for like a one scene role, and as far as I know, he did not do basically anything else after.
So. I mean, he's in the Twilights and he's in X-Men First Class, but he didn't take off from either of those.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because he's really good in his 2 scenes as Darwin, and then he's just not part of the team. But I really think the movie does a great job with that one scene, which is like that feels like a final villain confrontation. That feels like the thing that will launch the third act, and it happens about 45 minutes into the movie. And then the middle of the movie set piece at a cliff where they're going to get the kid back, and all the cops are in this giant sting, and they even do the crane overhead shot of like setting up the thing, and you're like, this is the end. This is the final confrontation of the movie, and it's coming an hour in, and we were just so invested. We were like, oh, the end of the movie's here, and they wrap it up, and are we doing spoilers or are we not doing spoilers?
Yeah, we can't do this movie without doing spoilers.
So then like Cheese gets killed in this shootout, and they're like, okay, well, Cheese is dead, and apparently the child died. Like the kid died in the shootout there. And they're like, okay, well, the kid's dead and the killer's dead. And
this is our Field from 7 moment. This is our big like something climax, and even Casey Affleck does like a voiceover at this point.
He's doing a voiceover monologue. They go to the funeral. Like it's like this is wrapping up. This is a very tragic end. And then he and Ed Harris sort of get this like thing where they're like, oh, this child molester is living with these 2 cocaine addicts that we met earlier in the movie, because they kind of explored the underground world of cocaine through Amy Ryan and when Casey Affleck's investigating Amy Ryan. And he's like, all right, let's go back here. And Ed Harris's partner gets killed. Ed Harris gets shot. Casey Affleck goes in, and the 2 coke dealers are like killed, and then they go upstairs and they find the child molester and they find the head of a. They do this really great edit where they like cut very deliberately, like he's flashing in and out of being conscious, but he finds a kid's head in a sink, and it's like it's I think it was implied to be the girl's head, but like you can't quite tell what the hell it is or what's happening. But he finds a child's head, so he kills the child molester, and you're like, okay, now we got the real guy. We found the real guy, and we killed the real guy, and that happens now. And there's still like 45 minutes left, and we're like, 2 people now have died with the blame on them, and it's like, all right, so now you're like, the movie's ending. And I think these twists and these cuts that Ben's implementing right now is just phenomenal stuff. Like he's just keeping you on your toes through this, which it's like the movie ends, and then there's a second ending that also feels like a complete ending, and you're just like, whoa! Like we have 2 complete endings that feel like supernatural and needed, until that ending's not legit either.
No,
it's wild.
No, then we get the reveal that when Ed Harris and Casey Affleck are having a conversation, Ed Harris says something that he really shouldn't know. And I love it in movies when they do that, you know, when a character reveals something that's like, now, how did you know that? And they're like, oh.
It's the only sort of like moment in Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness where I was like, oh, that's good. Where she's like, you didn't tell me her name, did you? And the whole illusion comes down. You're just like, damn, all right, that was good. That was good. I love that. I'm with you on that. So when that happens, you're like, oh shit. And then we get another piece of the puzzle in the form of like Amy Ryan's brother basically comes clean and is like, this is everything. Here's everything about it. Where it's like, it was the key's like the kid's alive. I wanted to get her away from her mom because her mom's a bad mom.
Hold on. You're getting ahead of yourself.
Well, no, he starts telling them, and then the bar they're in gets held up, which is another finale moment.
But the thing that he starts telling them, though, is that they took her for the ransom.
Right.
And that the child's not still alive. The brother tells him that the child is dead.
Right.
And that they took the kid for ransom. And then somebody comes in with a mask holding up the bar, and it's Ed Harris.
And the brother's like, he's like, I told him everything. I told him, you don't shoot me. It's over. And then gunshot goes off, and Ed Harris gets shot in the back by the bartender. And Casey now is chasing a bleeding Ed Harris around the streets of Boston to figure out, like, okay, that's Ed Harris. We got to figure out as well. And that in and of itself is like, oh, so is Ed Harris the bad guy? And then he drops a nugget to reveal that he's not the bad guy. We're on our 4th ending in the span of an hour, and it's awesome. All these twists are nuts. Like Ben comes in here with Aaron Stockard and really develops this story into a really, really good script, and he directs it like a 7-year vet of like, this is like his 4th movie, and it's his first one out. You're like, damn. And then we get to that last reveal where he kind of sort of puts it all together on his own, which I don't buy Casey Affleck putting this shit together whatsoever. This is a very elaborate plot. Casey can't function to put 2 words together if you've seen any movie he's been in. You ever seen the assassination of Jesse James with the Count Robert Ford? He's nominated for that movie. He can't string a word together in that movie, but whatever. He puts this together, and Michelle Monaghan apparently has solved it before he has even. And she's like, you go down this road, we're done. Like, because she's devastated that the kid is dead. Like from the first one, like she's broken after the first with the shootout with Cheese. She's really not a character of the movie for the second half because she's really devastated. And she's like, we're done if we go down this path. And like, because she's like, you have to be ready to face whatever reality. And the reality of it is that this whole plot was organized by Morgan Freeman, who after losing his daughter found that Amy Ryan's daughter needed a better home. Her brother, who has essentially raised her, is like, she needs to get out of the situation or she's going to be really, really like hurt. And then they elaborately frame Cheese, and Cheese essentially is also equally framed with the child molester, who they don't even frame. He's not even involved. They just assume it's him because he's a child molester. And he did something on his own, and it looks like it's that. So they killed him without knowing it was him. And Ed Harris bleeds out here after being shot by the bartender, but he reveals it. And Morgan's like, I'm going to adopt this kid and raise her as my own. And essentially you get this really great moral conundrum that he's like, do I leave this kid here to live a better life that's not real? Or do I take her home, which might be a worse life, but at least it's where she is supposed to be, and
Mhm.
it's the law. And Morgan Freeman poses that to him, and there's no final fight. There's no final like shootout confrontation, whatever. He
Morgan
gets
Freeman, like I expected, like, oh, okay, and when if he tries to go, Morgan Freeman's gonna like pull a gun on him or something,
right.
and he
But
never
Morgan
does.
Freeman just lets him make the call. He's like, "You make this call. You figured it out. You are in charge of this girl's well-being in life." And it is a devastating scene when Michelle Monaghan essentially leaves him. The cops come and take the girl back to Amy Ryan. They arrest Morgan Freeman. It goes all over the news that this former hero cop is now like he kidnapped a kid. He's become the thing he hates. The kid is like devastated to leave Morgan Freeman. She's like, I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
And she gets back to Amy Ryan, and Amy Ryan's putting on this show, and the kid's like, I don't want to be here. And it's insane. And the final shot is like Casey Affleck sitting on the couch with the girl he rescued, watching TV, while Amy Ryan goes out to do everything she's done, like
Mhm.
to go right back to the lifestyle she's been living. And he's like, I'll sit here and watch TV with you while she goes and does blow at the bar or whatever. And so Casey Affleck is now essentially sitting here with this kid that he might have ruined her life by bringing her home, and he has to live with it. And they're sitting on the couch, and there's no easy answer as to whether they're going to be okay or not. And it ends, and you're just like, that's great. This movie is phenomenal.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that like and that's the one thing though where I feel like Casey Affleck's performance doesn't quite get there is
Right.
because there's a great scene towards the end when Morgan Freeman and Affleck are having their confrontation and Casey is just breaking it down like because Morgan Freeman tells him in 20 years, you know, do you want to have this little girl come to you and say, "Oh, you want to be responsible for this girl being in this awful situation?" And Affleck's like, "Well, here, let me tell you what I don't want to have happen. I don't want to in 20 years this woman comes up to me and says, "Yeah, you were supposed to find me. You were supposed to look for me and you found me and you didn't take me home to my mom." And all the snacks, all the rides, all the games, all the love, it didn't matter because it wasn't my home. And I think that's a great monologue, great speech. I don't think Affleck sells it.
Not at all. And that's again, I really think Ben was being too modest by being like, I just want to direct and not be in this. He should have been that part. And I can totally picture Ben killing that monologue. Because I'll be honest with you, I think we don't give Ben Affleck nearly the credit he deserves as an actor. Because I think
I
as an actor, Ben Affleck is really written off as he's just kind of doing the same schlubby thing and everything. And he's kind of a funny guy, and sometimes he shows up. But a lot of times, Ben Affleck really can sell you on every man, like, just he can give you that everyman energy without being showy, and really can give you a really layered, like, reserved performance.
I understand your argument. You also have to remember this is 2007. Sure, Hollywoodland, but before that, Ben Affleck was basically like a punching bag in terms of making a lot of bad choices
Sure.
and being bad in a lot of things. Like he can be a great actor. He can also not be. And I understand that like he might have kind of bought into it and like maybe I shouldn't direct myself because I can be hit or miss.
I mean, sure, but I really think in hindsight, being 2020, this is a Ben Affleck role that he chose not to take, and he should have taken. I think this
That's
is
right.
sort of because I think this performance on the back of Hollywoodland really would have jump started the Ben Affleck renaissance we got in the early 2010s. It was
Yeah.
like Ben Affleck's back. And like we're gonna talk about it next week more in depth, but like next week he directs himself and he's phenomenal in both parts as a lead and
Mhm.
as a director. And like he really makes a big statement with his next movie. It's a statement movie. And I feel like this is a directorial debut. He could have really, really made that statement sooner. He could have made that statement sooner, and then his next two were just like would have been exponential growth on top of that, which maybe makes the next one after that not so good. But we'll get there in 3 weeks because neither of us can really comment. But like when it comes to Ben in this moment, I just think when it comes to that monologue, which is a great monologue, Ben Affleck is a great writer, like a really good writer. Like he's 5 for 5. on things he's written. Like to have your first movie you've ever written be Good Will Hunting, and then to do things like The Last Duel and this and The Town and everything. He's he's a really strong writer, and he's very good at the monologue, and he really writes that so well. And I feel like he would have delivered it better than anyone because it's his words. I think he would have really delivered that well. And I like see that, and I see Casey, and it was worse. It's worse because you see Casey Affleck do it, and you're like, Casey's just like 17 rungs below Ben as an actor, and so like you can like, but he looks close enough where you're like you can almost see Ben Affleck in the part, but he's just not doing it as well.
I also wouldn't be shocked if Ben wrote this for Casey, because there are specific things in the script of like everyone says he looks like he's like 2 and is like joking that he's like younger than he actually is. And so that is what makes me think that I wouldn't be shocked if Ben wrote this for Casey. I just don't think Casey's great in the role.
Not at all. And like honest to God, I really cannot wait till next week. But I do really think that like I think this is a really good debut that is hindered by him giving his brother the lead. I honestly think if he looked outside the Affleck family, he'd have gotten a better performance, or if he just sucked it up and took the risk on himself, it would have been a better performance. But like,
Yeah.
like Monahan's really great, and like we said, everyone around him is really great. But that monologue is so special. It's such a special monologue. It's like I would say it's not exactly the same, but it's got the same DNA as some of the script like monologues that he and Damon put together in Good Will Hunting.
That's
Like,
fair.
it shares some DNA where it's like one of those really big dramatic moments that really hits if you have the right performance, and it's just the wrong performance.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
No, I'd agree.
So then this movie comes out in 2007. Amy Ryan gets nominated for an Academy Award. It's oh man, what studio put it out? I'm gonna guess it's Warner Brothers. I'm gonna take a roll the dice off memory and assume it's Warner Brothers.
I'll check.
He gets lauded as like, oh my goodness, Ben Affleck can direct movies. It makes a bunch of top 10
Miramax.
lists. Miramax, okay. It makes a ton of top 10 lists at the end of the year. They made it for $19 million. It makes about 40. So it's a box office success, a mid-budget success. And it shows everyone that's like, hey, Ben Affleck can make movies as a director. And he then gets called in to Warner Brothers to make his next movie after a different Oscar winner turns it down. And we'll talk about that next week. But my overall thoughts on Gone Baby Gone is that this is a really strong start to someone's career. Like, if this is your first movie, this just shows that Ben Affleck has spent so much time around the industry and had soaked up all the right things from people like Kevin Smith and from people like Michael Bay and all the different Gus Van Sant, like all the different great directors he's worked with. And I can't believe I just said great and Michael Bay in the same sentence, but like competent directors. Michael Bay's sometimes a competent director.
But here's the thing. He wasn't a competent director on Pearl Harbor.
True. But like
the time he worked with him. So
and Armageddon, to be clear.
Not fair. Well, no. Armageddon is a bad movie. Armageddon is a bad movie.
In your purview, but in the rest of the world, it's a pretty decent movie. But he's worked with like
what are we defining as the rest of the world? Texas, sure. That rest of the world. Normal people don't like Armageddon.
But the point I'm making is like with work with like Richard Linklater and like Kevin Smith and like the different directors he's worked with consistently, he absorbed what makes directing an art and like how to do it well and how to do it maybe even better than those people did. At least a couple of them. In the case of like Kevin Smith and Gus Van Sant, I would say he's on track to be.
I think like Gus Van Sant, you're not like, and like Gus Van Sant, and like he's even worked with like John Madden at that point. He had worked with a few guys. Like he had worked with John Woo. It was just
he's worked with Martin Brest, but I don't know if he took anything from Martin.
I mean, that's the thing, is those were good directors not making some of their best work.
Sure, but the point is like he's worked. But the thing is, he's worked with a lot of good directors, and like the lessons he took from that, I think he clearly instilled in his own work on the first one out, and made something better than even some of those directors have ever made. A movie that I think is better than even the best thing Michael Bay's ever made.
I would agree with that.
and this is just the first one out. So I think this shows a lot of like promise from him as a director. It also shows it's the first thing he's written since Good Will Hunting. And it
Yeah.
shows that the guy's like, I can write. Like, I can still really write when I care about something.
No, I feel like Affleck had a reputation of kind of being the Garfunkel of that duo. You know?
I mean, he definitely did, because at that point, you had Matt Damon like doing the art films, getting Oscar nominations as an actor for Good Will Hunting and The Talented Mr. Ripley, and like working with like Francis Ford Coppola and like all these other high profile directors. And like he had an action franchise. Like they both went for action franchises, and Ben took on Jack Ryan and it didn't work, but Damon creates Bourne and is now like the face of the 2000s action scene. And he has a new buddy in Greengrass. So like Damon's like succeeding working with like Eastwood and other directors.
Well, but I'm saying
Ben's out in the movies making Geely.
I'm saying even when they were an actual duo, like when they were doing Good Will Hunting, I feel like there was a kind of a reputation. There's like a Family Guy joke where it's like, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon writing Good Will Hunting, and Matt Damon writes the whole thing, and Ben Affleck is like, put my name on it. Like, no, man, I wrote this whole thing. Man, just come on, be nice, put my name on it. So it's like there was a reputation that Ben Affleck was essentially didn't bring anything to the table, and I think Gone Baby Gone shows that he did bring something to the table.
Essentially, and especially, and like I think the only area that those two duo worked together where Ben shined was whenever they worked with Kevin Smith, and that's clearly because Ben worked more into Kevin Smith's sensibilities, and Damon only did like one or two. And he worked really well in it, but it was definitely Ben's thing. And like Gone Baby Gone does such a good job of being like, all right, this is me. I'm making my stamp as a director and as a writer. And I don't think and the only thing Matt's really ever written since Good Will Hunting is when Ben comes back to him and is like, hey, let's do The Last Duel. And like that's their first time writing together since Good Will Hunting, and it's also like the fifth thing Ben's written since then. And The Last Duel is polished. I wish we were covering it. That movie's great. That's a great movie. But maybe if we did bonus features, that would be a bonus feature. But I just think Gone Baby Gone is such a great like return to form to Good Will Hunting Ben Affleck in a lot of ways, as a writer, as an actor, and he like makes such a strong comeback off the back of the performance in Hollywoodland, and then this movie. And I think it just jumpstarts him into a role where then he's like, all right, now I'm going to be Batman. And it's like, and then he kills that. Like he just crushes being Batman. So it's like Ben Affleck is like about to make a big resurgence off the back of directing something really special about Baby Gone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, next week we'll be talking about his heist film, The Town. Should be a good time. Anything else you have to add?
No, I don't think so. I just want to reiterate one more time. The Town's going to be so fucking fun. I'm so excited to watch The Town next week. And then we got to do Argo Fuck Yourself and then Live by Night, which I haven't seen since theaters, and you have never seen, I don't think.
No, I've never seen it.
It's going to be great. And then we get to watch We Bought a Shoe, and I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you to the video store. See you later.